You have been called the following: demon, devil, child rapist, pedophile,
right?
Statutory rapist, confessed child molester.
None of them are true.
These are talking about behaviors. Behaviors are discrete actions that have a beginning and an end.
Right.
These are things that can be observed. They either happened or they don't.
That's absolutely right. And I'm going to say clearly, unequivocally, categorically, none of them are true. Essentially, the core of it and the way it began is a couple of people helped catalyze and organize false complaints of sexual harassment in Israel. That was 10 years ago, Phil. Mm-hmm. Those false complaints, let me just say, 8 years later, it turned out that there weren't even complaints. And they lied about the fact that there were complaints. But I didn't know that for 8 years.
Well, no, there were complaints. They just weren't filed with the police.
That's right.
There are complainants.
That's right.
They speak very vocally,
right.
very specifically.
That's right. There were
I have those complaints, and I can go over them. So it's not true that there aren't complaints. They just were not police filed.
They were false complaints. I understood them to be police complaints, and that understanding dictated all my actions.
So you fled the country.
I didn't flee the country, right? And as I left the country, completely legally, right, and appropriately.
Well, you said yourself that you left because in that country, those behaviors could have dire consequences if you were found to be guilty of what they were saying you did, which you say you didn't do.
Right. And I was told that sexual harassment in Israel, unlike any other country, right, is a felony. What I did was I flew to America, right? I went to a very close friend of mine's house, and the advice I got, I hadn't slept for 4 days. In 4 days, I was up almost around the clock. And the advice I got was, you've got to recover your computer. He said, what you do in America is just take it on yourself, fall on your sword, have time to then get a lawyer, recover your computer, right? Go back to Israel, right? And prove it wrong.
So you write a letter essentially confessing to and apologizing for what you're being accused of.
It was written for me, right? I could barely write something in those 4 days, Phil.
Okay, let me look at some passages of this. You said, I want to say, I understand I have made grave mistakes. I made choices that clearly hurt people I love. I am infinitely saddened and profoundly sorry for the pain I have caused. I take full responsibility for all the pain I have inflicted. Clearly, all of this and more indicates that in these regards, I am sick. I need to acknowledge that sickness and to get help for it. That is what I am doing in this letter. I mean, it goes on.
I know the letter.
And you say you didn't write this.
This letter.
You signed it.
I signed it. I take responsibility for that mistake, right?
So this letter was a fraud.
This letter was written upon the advice of, wise and good people, right? We made a mistake, and the reason was...
Well, that's a fraud.
The reason was because I was being accused wrongly of sexual harassment. But again, I take responsibility because I signed it. Right? So I'm the only person who can take responsibility for it. It was a mistake. It's a mistake that I greatly regret.
But you're not taking responsibility for it. You're saying you didn't write it. It was somebody else that advised you.
I'm taking responsibility for signing it because I'm the person who signed it. It was my name. Okay, I'm just giving you the facts.
This was in response to women you thought at the time had filed police reports. And the reports, to your understanding, alleged what?
One was that I had made false promises. That was the major claim. That I had made false promises to marry to 5 different people in order to gain sexual relations. That in Israel, right, is under the rape statute. And that is, a very, very, very serious accusation. Second accusation was that I had used my authority as an employer to gain a sexual engagement with another person who was on my staff. Both of those weren't true, but in order to prove they weren't true, right, I needed to recover my computer.
But isn't that a really odd approach? If you've not done this,
why
leave the country and then write a letter of confession?
It's a great question. And so I received very strong advice from people, very, very close to the system, which said that the first thing you have to do is just ensure your physical safety. You must, right, immediately leave the country, get your computer, and, you've got to have that computer ultimately reconstructed in America. You can then go back to Israel.
So this letter is a lie.
That letter is a lie.